Welcome to the Lion's Share podcast, where we break down today's most impactful research and bring fresh insights from the academic frontier straight to you.
We're here to take, well, often pretty dense academic research and really pull out the key insights you need.
Yeah, making it useful, making it understandable.
Exactly. And today we're digging into a really crucial paper from 2012 by Donelson, Mclnnis, Mergenthaler, and Yong. It tackles a huge issue for any company, the risk of getting hit with securities litigation.
Absolutely. High-stakes stuff.
Okay, let's unpack this. The big question, really, for managers, for legal teams, even for investors is, well, can being timely with bad news actually protect a company from lawsuits?
Does transparency pay off in that way?
And if this paper, it claims to offer a pretty solid answer. They use a really novel way to measure how transparent companies are being.
That's right. And for you listeners, especially those of you who are practitioner scholars, this is, I'd say, essential reading. It really shifts the focus.
How so?
Well, it moves beyond just, did management issue a press release? Did they check that box? Instead, it looks at how quickly the entire market learns the bad news through all channels.
The total picture.
Exactly. And that has big implications for how you think about risk mitigation and disclosure strategy. So our mission today is to get into how they measured that speed and what it really means for management.
So let's start with the basics. The foundation here is something called the litigation reduction hypothesis. It's an idea that goes back, to Skinner in '94.
Yep, Skinner. The core idea is that if you voluntarily disclose bad news early, it actually lowers your expected litigation costs down the road.
And why is that so critical? It connects to the legal side, right? Rule 10b-5.
Precisely. To win a securities lawsuit, plaintiffs generally have to prove fraudulent intent, that management knew the bad news and deliberately hid it.
Okay.
So if you reveal bad news really late after the fact, it just looks bad. It creates this perception, maybe unfairly, that managers were hiding something.
Makes it easier for the plaintiffs.
Much easier. Especially under the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act, the PSLRA from '95. That act requires plaintiffs to show a strong inference of intent right at the start. Late disclosure practically hands them that argument.
So timely disclosure is basically your best defense against even the appearance of hiding something.
That's the theory. It preempts that narrative.
Now, you mentioned their novel measure. That seems key here. They needed something beyond just counting press releases.
Yeah, because liability isn't tied to how the market learned, just that it learned material information, or should have. So they developed this metric called timeliness.
Timeliness. Okay, what does that actually capture?
Think of it like tracking the market's learning curve for bad news within a quarter. They calculate it as the average daily fraction of the total bad earnings news that gets revealed during that quarter's revelation window.
How do they know the total bad news?
Good question. They use the evolution of the consensus analyst earnings forecast as a proxy for what the market expects and learns over time.
So if analysts are rapidly slashing their forecasts,
the timeliness measure goes up, meaning the market is learning the bad news quickly. It's clever because it captures news flow from, everything press releases, yes, but also conference calls, maybe private talks with analysts, their own research, digging things up.
So it bypasses the whole, did management issue a specific warning question, and just looks at the outcome. How fast did the market figure it out?
Exactly. It's about the speed of total information diffusion.
All right, let's pivot slightly. Question 1 for our structured dive. What is the research question, and why is it important? We've touched on it, but let's state it clearly.
Okay, the core research question is the timely revelation of bad earnings news associated with a lower likelihood of facing securities litigation?
Simple question, but obviously complex to answer. Why is nailing this down so important for companies?
Well, the authors lean on those 3 supporting factors we mentioned earlier based on that litigation reduction hypothesis. First, and maybe most critically, timely disclosure weakens the core claim that managers intentionally withheld bad news. It damages the scienter or fraudulent intent argument.
Undercuts the plaintiff's main weapon.
Pretty much. Second, it shrinks the problem practically. Faster disclosure means a shorter non-disclosure period.
So the class period for the lawsuit is shorter.
Exactly. Fewer investors are included in the class, which means potential damages and settlement amounts are likely to be much, much lower. It contains the financial exposure.
Makes sense. And the third reason?
It helps avoid those huge single-day stock price crashes when the bad news finally hits all at once. Those massive drops are often what trigger lawsuits in the first place. Smoothing out the news flow makes a big lawsuit less likely to even get started.
So timeliness attacks the problem from multiple angles. Intent, damages, and the initial trigger.
That's the argument, yes.
Okay, question 2. What theories do the authors rely upon to develop their hypotheses?
Well, the main one, as we've discussed, is definitely Skinner's litigation reduction hypothesis. That's the theoretical engine driving the whole study.
And connecting that back to the legal framework. The liability really comes from the failure to disclose earlier, right? Or from previous statements that became misleading because new bad news wasn't shared.
Exactly. It's usually about an omission or a prior misstatement. The bad news itself isn't the fraud. The delay in revealing it, potentially, is.
So the theory suggests that getting the total bad news out quickly, through any channel, helps disprove that crucial element of fraudulent intent that the PSLRA demands plaintiffs show.
Right. It's about showing you weren't trying to deceive the market by holding back.
Let's move to the how. Question 3. How does the research design address validity construct, internal, statistical conclusion, external, and also things like non-random assignment and lack of exogeneity? This sounds like where things get technical.
They do, but it's crucial. The big challenge here, identified by Skinner back in '97, is endogeneity. It's the chicken or egg problem, meaning firms that know they have really, really bad news might have a stronger incentive to disclose something early to try and manage it. So is it the early disclosure that prevents the suit, or is it just that firms with slightly less catastrophic news disclose earlier and also happen to get sued less?
The Skinner problem. How do they tackle that?
Their main weapon was the matched pairs design. This is really key for internal validity and addressing that non-random assignment issue.
So they didn't just compare sued firms to any old non-sued firm?
No. Very carefully done. They took 423 firms that were sued and meticulously matched each one to a firm that wasn't sued but looked almost identical in 2 critical ways.
Which were?
First, the magnitude of the total bad earnings news. They wanted pairs that had similarly bad news, objectively speaking.
Okay, so comparing apples to apples on the badness.
Right. And second, they matched on the predicted probability of being sued, using a model based on known litigation determinants like company size, past returns, analyst following, insider trading, things like that.
So they control for both the severity of the news and the firm's general underlying risk profile before even looking at timeliness.
Exactly. This helps isolate the effect of disclosure timing, stripping away those other factors that could confound the results.
What about the validity of their main measure, timeliness? That's construct validity, right?
Right. And their argument is that this analyst forecast-based measure is superior to just looking at management press releases. Why? Because it captures all the ways news gets out.
The total information environment.
Yes. Formal warnings, conference call nuances, whispers to analysts, analyst reports themselves. If the consensus forecast is moving, the market is learning, regardless of the specific channel. And legally, that's what matters. Did the material information get out?
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. I remember reading they did another check, comparing firms against themselves.
Yes, that was a very clever robustness check for internal validity. They looked at the sued firms and compared the timeliness score in the quarter they got sued versus quarters when they didn't get sued.
And what did they find?
They found that the news disclosure was significantly less timely only in the specific quarter that led to the lawsuit.
So it wasn't just that these firms were inherently slow reporters all the time.
Precisely. It suggests the timing difference in that specific litigation quarter was the crucial factor, not some fixed characteristic of the firm. Really strengthens the causal argument.
Okay, that leads us to question 4. What econometric methods are employed, and how do they address weaknesses in the design? You mentioned the matched pairs. What stats did they run?
Because they use that matched pairs design, the appropriate technique is conditional logistic regression.
Why conditional logit specifically?
Well, conditional logit is specifically designed for analyzing matched case control studies like this. When you've matched your observations based on characteristics related to the outcome in this case, being sued, SUED, and those control variables like news magnitude and predicted risk conditional logit effectively controls for all the factors, stable or unobserved, that are shared within each pair.
So it zeroes in on the differences within the pair, like the timeliness score.
Exactly. It's statistically robust for this kind of setup.
And did they do other tests to make sure their results weren't just some fluke of the matching or the model?
Oh yeah, they were very thorough on robustness checks. They tried alternative matching criteria like matching on market cap and returns or industry and minimum return.
Did the result hold up?
They did. They also ran tests on the broader population, not just the 50% matched sample, and found the effect was still economically meaningful. And they did specific tests to rule out a purely mechanical relationship, like the timeliness measure just happening to end near a big stock drop that defines the class period.
So pretty comprehensive testing.
Very much so. They really tried to anticipate and address the potential econometric critiques.
All right, question 5. What are the major results, and do they answer the research question? Did faster disclosure actually reduce litigation risk?
Yes, emphatically. The results show a consistent, statistically significant negative correlation between timeliness and the likelihood of being sued.
Can you give us a sense of how strong that relationship is? I remember a figure that really highlighted it.
Yeah, figure 1 in the paper is quite stark. It shows the cumulative proportion of bad news revealed over the quarter. For the non-sued firms in the matched sample, over 55% of the total bad news was out by the halfway point of the revelation window.
Over half the news out halfway through. And for the sued firms?
Less than 25%, a huge difference in the speed of information flow.
Wow, 55% versus less than 25%. That's a dramatic visual. How does that translate into risk reduction, quantitatively?
Okay, looking at the regression results, specifically Table 4 using the probability matched sample, they calculate marginal effects. A 1-unit increase in their ranked timeliness measure, basically moving up 1 quintile in terms of disclosure speed, is associated with a decrease in the probability of being sued by up to 5.6 percentage points.
5.6 percentage points within that matched sample context.
Yep.
That sounds pretty significant from a risk management perspective.
It really is. It suggests that actively managing the speed of disclosure can have a tangible impact on legal exposure.
And what about the type of lawsuits? Did it only deter the weaker ones?
That's another crucial finding. The negative relationship held strong for both lawsuits that were eventually settled and those that were ultimately dismissed.
Okay, that's important. Why?
Because it suggests that timely disclosure doesn't just help defend against strong claims. It actually deters the filing of weaker, perhaps non-meritorious claims in the first place.
So it stops lawsuits that might have failed anyway, but would still cost a fortune to defend.
Exactly. That's a significant practical benefit and a potential policy implication. Transparency weeds out the nuisance suits, too.
Okay, final structure question number 6. What conclusions do the authors make, and are they warranted given the theory, design, and econometrics?
Their main conclusion is that timely revelation of bad earnings news deters securities litigation, and this works through multiple channels, reducing perceived intent, shortening the class period, and smoothing stock price reactions.
And based on everything we've discussed, the theory, the strong match design, the conditional logic, the robustness checks, you'd say that conclusion is well supported.
I would, yes. The evidence seems quite compelling. The design directly addresses the major endogeneity concerns.
Now, how did they square their findings with some older studies? I seem to recall some previous work found that firms issuing warnings were actually more likely to be sued. That sounds contradictory.
Ah, yes, the reconciliation test in Table 6. This is fascinating and gets to the heart of their contribution. Those prior studies typically used a simple dummy variable. Did the firm issue a formal press release warning, coded as 1 or not 0?
Okay, and using that measure.
Using that warning indicator, they often found a positive coefficient, meaning firms that issued a formal warning were indeed more likely to be sued. This suggested warnings were maybe a sign of desperation or really severe underlying problems.
But this paper finds the opposite, with timeliness.
Exactly. When they swap out that crude warning dummy for their more comprehensive timeliness measure in the same regression models, the coefficient flips to strongly negative.
Whoa. So using a better measure completely reverses the finding. What does that imply?
It implies that the non-sued firms, the ones successfully avoiding litigation, were achieving high timeliness scores, not necessarily through more formal press release warnings, but through other disclosure channels.
Like conference calls, analyst briefings.
Precisely. Especially thinking back to the pre-Reg FD environment when selective disclosure was more common. These firms were getting the information into the market quickly via multiple routes, leading to high timeliness and lower lawsuit risk, even if they issued fewer official warnings.
So the conclusion about multi-channel disclosure being key seems fully justified by this comparison. It wasn't just the warning, it was the overall speed of market learning.
That's the key takeaway. The methodology justifies the conclusion.
So what does this all mean? We've gone through the details, the methods. What's the bottom line for executives, for boards, for anyone involved in corporate disclosure?
Well, I think the core message is that the appearance of transparency, backed by the reality of getting information out quickly through whatever channels work, is probably the most effective shield against securities litigation.
It's not just about compliance checkboxes.
No. Managers really need to prioritize getting the total negative earnings news disseminated early. Think of disclosure less as a regulatory burden and more as a strategic risk management tool. It's about shaping market perception proactively to undercut the very basis of a potential fraud claim.
In the study itself, it gives us a powerful way to measure that information environment, doesn't it? Using those analyst forecasts.
Absolutely. It highlights that tension between just following the minimal rules on formal disclosure versus meeting the broader spirit of Rule 10b-5, which cares about the total mix of information the market has. Analyst consensus seems like a pretty good barometer for that total mix.
Does this open up avenues for future research using this timeliness measure?
Oh, definitely. You could use this measure to explore all sorts of things. How does disclosure timeliness affect a firm's reputation or its cost of capital? Does it impact information asymmetry between managers and investors?
You could also use it to study regulatory changes, right?
Yeah.
Like Reg FD or Sarbanes-Oxley.
Exactly. Did those regulations actually change the speed at which information gets out, as measured by timeliness? Lots of potential applications.
Okay, let's wrap up with a final provocative thought for you, our listener. The paper acknowledges a limitation. We can never truly know precisely when managers first learned the bad news internally.
Right, that's the black box.
So here's the thought. Given the strong deterrent effect this paper documents for timely disclosure, does the market and by extension the legal system effectively start treating untimely disclosure as almost presumptive evidence of hiding something? Even if managers genuinely only found out late themselves.
Is delay itself treated as evidence of intent, regardless of the reality inside the firm?
That perception, that market reaction to delay, could arguably be the biggest cost of opacity, couldn't it? Even if a court might eventually find no actual fraudulent intent existed.
That's a powerful incentive, isn't it? To prioritize speed and transparency above almost everything else when bad news surfaces. Avoid that negative perception from the start.
Definitely something to chew on. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning into the Lion's Share podcast. If you enjoyed today's discussion, share it with a friend and join us next time for more ideas worth talking about. We'll see you next time.